Hi everyone, this is Stijn again. We're close to 50 now, so we're going to start our webinar, the second one in our webinar series. We did our first one in June of this year together with Xavier Bachelard from Firmenich, who gave us insight into his HR strategy and also zoomed into onboarding. Today I have the honor to present together with Wouter van Linden, who's been a great client and I can almost say friend for the last couple of years now. He's been one of our very first clients at the time, and no surprise because Wouter's always been a bit of a pioneer in the HR innovation, HR tech fields. He just told me that they're looking at launching a chatbot, for example, in HR. I know that's something that a lot of you and a lot of companies are looking at. They're doing video recruitment as well. They're launching a project in virtual reality for employer branding. So today I have the honor to actually get some of his time to talk about onboarding. If you want to get more out of him related to these other projects and innovations, I'm sure you can just reach out to him or connect on LinkedIn because onboarding is definitely not the only thing he's doing, he and his team. Me, myself, I'm one of the founders of Talmundo. I'm the CEO today. I work with a team of 20 people around Europe to help companies onboard people better, basically. So that's us, both a couple of years younger. I'm not sure about you, Wouter. Is that 10 years ago or 2 years ago or 6 months ago? Or? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's me like 2 years ago, I think, on our official photo shoot from Talmundo. So a few additional gray hairs for me, and then that's me today, basically. Looking at onboarding and a bit of the business case on the next slide. I'm sure I'm preaching to the preacher here. I'm sure you've seen this many times before, especially when you're in talent acquisition. This is the traditional business case about why it's important to actually try and retain your people. Attrition costs an awful lot of money. Now, onboarding is one of the key tools to try and make sure that people are actually going to stay, or at least they're going to stay for a decent amount of time, and they're actually not going to run away. What we often see is that poor onboarding has a major impact on whether people stay or go in that first year. You only have one chance to make a first impression, right? It's not just in professional life, it's in many ways. The same goes when you change employer, you start at a new company, and you basically are exposed to how they basically treat you, welcome you, how your colleagues are like, how the whole administration process is being structured. It's got a huge impact. And we've actually got some numbers on the next slide where you see that up to 90% of employees actually decide to stay with a company in their first year. So in the first year, you basically make up your mind and has an extremely strong influence whether you're going to stay or go in the years to come. So that has a huge impact, more than the years after. Also in terms of basically success of companies retaining employees, you're so much better off with some sort of formal onboarding program than having nothing at all. It's sometimes surprising to see that still 35% of companies today basically invest nothing in onboarding. So there's absolutely zero. We do hope that people do get some sort of contract there and everything's kind of legal, but there's not much more beyond the actual contract. And we at Talmundo actually are trying to help you understand where you are in onboarding. So we developed our own onboarding scan, and we'll do a mini version of this right now just to get some interactivity going and just to find out, and for you guys to find out who's doing what in onboarding, basically. So we're doing a mini poll. You can just provide your answers through the GoToWebinar system. First one is, my company has a structured employee onboarding process in place already. So we'd be excited to know. This is completely anonymous, by the way. We can't see people here who's saying what's the same for you. So you can put in your votes right now, and we'll look at the results in a few seconds. So my company has a structured employee onboarding process in place already. it's going to tell us something about where you are on your onboarding journey, I would say. So do we have some results for this one? True, false. So interesting coloring here, or I would say the true is usually green and the false is red, but we'll figure that out later. But basically true is so just over half actually do have a formal onboarding process of some sort, and just under 50% doesn't. So which is probably even a bit higher than the 35% we were just showing of having no onboarding process or structure whatsoever. Second question that we had, and we only have 3, our onboarding process tends to happen, and then you've got a couple of options to choose from. Are you already taking that online or intranet or apps or something, or through email, or it basically happens in person? That's the way we did it in Talmundo, to be honest, at the very beginning, because we were only hiring a handful, so we could actually do that in person, or a combination of the above. So online, intranet, email, in person, or a combination of the above. I think we're getting the votes right now. Let's see where people are and what the majority here is doing. So let's take a look at the results. Online, only 4%. No email spamming to onboard these. I can see in person, 23%, or a combination. So probably more an in-person and maybe a tiny online piece. Most people go for the combination of the above. Cool. Our onboarding program lasts we see a big variety when we speak to clients and companies about best practices in terms of how long is onboarding is supposed to take. Is that just one day, the first day when you show up? Is that 1 week, 1 month, more than 3 months? Is that 6 months, which often coincides with things like probation periods and things? So how do you look at onboarding? What's the how long should it last, basically? I can see some votes coming in again. Let's look at the last result of the last poll. So 1 day, 4%, 1 week, 3. So more of you are inclining towards more than 3 months, which definitely makes sense. I'd say most of our clients are between the 3 and the 6 months period, where most are tending more towards the 3 months to keep it like pretty concise, to the point, lots of relevant information in a relatively short amount of time. But you could definitely argue 6 months is a reasonable onboarding time as well. And in the end, your learning never really finishes. What we've got for you is we've got this link to onboardingscan.com on the next slide, I believe. So onboardingscan.com, and that's basically based on a model which we find very helpful, which is not a model that we came up with in all honesty, but a model that we've always enjoyed using and that many of our clients are using. There's different levels in onboarding, from being just compliant to also providing a lot of clarification on the job, around connection, around culture. That actually brings you to these 3 levels. Level 1 is you're just compliant, basically. You provide people a contract, you don't do much more. If you move to level 2, you are compliant and you provide clarification, you're clear around objectives, job descriptions and things. And there's elements of culture and connection there as well, connecting with your colleagues up front, being able to deep dive into the culture and get a good feel for a company culture before you actually join. Level 3, you're a total star. You do all of these 4, and you do them in an awesome way, basically. And we've researched that only 37% of organizations are at that level right now. We see a lot of companies, however, investing in this and moving up the levels. And that's actually the introduction towards Wouter, because when I met Wouter a couple of years ago, KPMG was more around level 1. So they were doing stuff, but more the compliance piece, I would say. But they noticed that there was definitely room for improvement, and actually they had an issue with people leaving in the first year. So it was very tangible and very noticeable. And I think today KPMG can say that they're more around a level 3 type of strategy star. But it took them some time and energy and blood, sweat, and tears to get there. But I'd like to pass on now to Wouter, who's going to give a bit more insight into how KPMG has been moving from this level 1 to level 3.
Okay, thanks, Stijn. Good afternoon. Probably needless to introduce KPMG, but I'll just have a short commercial break. KPMG, we're active in audit, advisory, and tax and legal. So that's enough for the commercial break. We have more than 1,300 people in Belgium, and onboarding, let's say, was put in the agenda like 5 years ago. I was asking myself, and I will also have the same open question for you, why the hell should we be concerned about onboarding? And by the way, I don't want to convince you, but I noticed that, and this was also confirmed by research, that overall employees only get like 90 days to prove themselves within a company. And other research also explained that it takes over 3 years for an external hire to reach the same level of performance as someone who's already within the firm, but it takes up to 7 years to get to the same level of return, taking into consideration all the investments and all the costs of recruitment, a higher salary, more time to get used to the job, etc. So good onboarding is crucial because it will make sure that the new employee will have a decent level of productivity very soon within the company. It will definitely help in retention, making sure that the employee will stay for a very long time in the company. And it will also help in setting satisfaction, not only for the employee, but also for KPMG as a company, and definitely, most importantly, for our clients. Telling something more about KPMG, we only have 2 assets. I mean, we don't have machines, we only have clients and we have people. So as a company, and I'm not only talking now about HR department, I think HR department is important, but also for the entire company, everybody should be HR. We should all be concerned about the people and make sure that we can attract them, but also that we can keep them motivated and engage them very soon. And engagement does not start as from day one. I'll explain you later on how we see this. Some more information about KPMG, just to get a picture. So we're over 1,300 people. Every year we have 150 experienced people coming on board. We have next Monday we will have 175 graduates who will start the first steps in their career at KPMG. On the current basis, we have 95 vacancies open for experienced profiles that we want to hire. The average age of our people is 32.5. We have an average seniority of 6 years and a half of our people. Our turnover is 17%, which may seem high, but it's quite okay for our sector. The 56-44 is the percentage of men and women within the company. And the last figure I want to share with you is 2.5% is our rate of absenteeism. So we have quite young people and also healthy people. And we want them to be in good shape all of the time, starting when with the first day when they join KPMG. When we got in contact with Talmundo a couple of years ago, we already had a good onboarding process in place. I mean, I think we had contacts like 3 years ago, and as I said, I started revising our onboarding process like 5 years ago. And the onboarding process that we developed was okay, but I felt that we were still missing something. And Talmundo helped us in identifying this missing link. Because what we missed was that we were faced with the 175 graduates that we hire every year. But you should know they start next Monday, but the first one of them, they already signed their contract in December of the previous year, which means that there is quite a big gap between the signing of the contract and their first day at KPMG, sometimes 7 to 8 months. And we experienced that onboarding should not start on the 18th of September, but should already start at a sooner moment. And that's why we decided to enlarge our onboarding process by also including a pre-onboarding phase. And on the next slide, you see then an overview of the different steps, how we see the entire onboarding process, starting with the pre-onboarding, a couple of months already before then the actual welcome day. And then we have like post checks, some moments in time that we pay attention to the new people, which starts at week 1, month 1, month 3, month 6. where every time we have regular feedback moments, just to make sure that people feel happy at the company. And it's all around balancing the 4 C's. So there, as a coincidence, Talmundo and KPMG, we've built our onboarding process around the 4 C's. So the 4 C's, it's about the lowest level compliance, make sure that the employee knows what's going on within the company, what are the basic rules, the policies and the procedures. The next C, it's about clarification. It's about making sure that the employee understands what's expected from him or from her, what's the role about. The third C, it's about culture. It's about making sure that the employee understands what's going on within the company, what are the norms, what are the formal norms, and what also the informal norms within the company. And the highest level is then the C of the connection. It's about interpersonal relationships. How can we help in making sure that the employee starts building the internal network, which is also very, very important in terms of onboarding and further integration within the company. This is an overview of all the different steps, how we make this very concrete. And the onboarding app, we call them the welcome app, as developed by Talmundo, is there the first step in the entire onboarding process. Because we felt that if you don't have any contact with a new hire between the moment of signing the contract and the actual moment of starting, or maybe a couple of days before starting, because you also need to get some information about the employee so that you can create his account, you feel that we felt in the past that we sometimes we lost new hires candidates, because we are hiring people on a very challenging market, which means that even when new hires have signed their contracts, still other companies try to convince them to come and sign for them and make sure that they break their contract with KPMG. So the app will help us in starting making this connection already with the new hire, making sure that you have already a first engagement as from the moment of signing the contract on which you can further build. And the next slide shows you some visuals of how the app looks like. And it's about giving information. As you see there, the counter 170 is counting down to the actual days that he or she will start at KPMG. And then you see then the different blocks. It's about all kind of information that you could share with the employee about the policies and the procedures within the company. But it's not only about the things that he should read. You could also include a film, for instance, where the CEO can present himself, can present the company, can tell something about the strategy of KPMG. You see that somewhere in the middle, the Vision 2020, it's about the KPMG strategy. What's also very interesting, and this is my favorite, is that you have the did you knows, some useful information, some fun information about the company that you can share then with the new hire. We also have kind of questions for the juniors. We also have questions for the more senior people so that they can already test their knowledge about KPMG. You see there the block under the Vision 2020 film, Introduce Yourself. This is a tool by means of which they can already present themselves to their new team, to their performance manager, to their colleagues. They can say who they are, that they're looking forward to join them, and so they can already start building on the connection elements. And the app also has a pulse checks, and I'll come back to this later on. The pulse check also gives us as HR some feedback on how the candidates experience the HR process, the process of recruitment, the first contacts with the company. Also very useful information for us to take away so that we can there as well improve our recruitment process. So the onboarding app is part of the pre-onboarding phase of the entire onboarding process. And then let's maybe give you some insight in how the different steps on day 1, week 1, month 1, month 3, month 6, how they look like at KPMG. Next Monday, for instance, we'll have an induction days for graduates. It's a fun day. I mean, it's not about giving them boring presentations about the different services of KPMG, but it's a fun day where they get to know their new colleagues, 175 in total. We will have a talk show with our CEO, with some clients, people who will tell about KPMG. We will also have some workshops around corporate social responsibility, social media, communication skills, innovation. Again, workshops in small groups where they have the opportunity to learn in a fun way about KPMG, and at the same time, they can already start connecting with their new colleagues. On the next slide, you also have a screenshot of a game that we play. On the right-hand side, you see the KPMG challenge. It's a kind of a monopoly built around the KPMG values, about the KPMG policies and procedures, for instance, about how to use social media within the company. This is also like 1 hour done in the afternoon that they will play a game. So the first day it's about the 4 C's, specifically then about making sure that you get connected with the colleagues, that you feel already the culture at KPMG. It's not about compliance. We will not explain what the core policy is all about. It's about fun, getting to know each other, getting to know KPMG better. You have a drink together. You will have a drink and have food together at the end of the day. And so this is like giving them a good feeling after the first day, that they come home at night and then they probably tell to their parents or their girlfriend, boyfriend, wow, this didn't feel as a first day at work, but this was really a fun day. And then the second day, let's say, then the real life starts with then the real onboarding on the job. And then how we see then the first week. On the next slide then, again, the overview. In week 1, for instance, we also provide the performance manager. That's what the PM stands for. The performance manager is a person who will guide the newcomer through the different years of his career at KPMG with a checklist so that they know what to think of during the first week. Some small hints, for instance, make sure that the new hire never eats alone in our restaurant. I mean, my heart breaks every time when I see somebody eating alone. It's a small hint, but sometimes people really forget to invite a newcomer within the company to join them for lunch. So this is also included in the checklist. The My Career Foundation that you see in week 1 is what we call our first step in our development curriculum. My Career Foundation is our translation of what we call the psychological contract. So during week 1, we already question our newcomers. What are their expectations toward KPMG as their first employer? And what can we expect from them in their first job? And what we see is that they expect from KPMG a lot of fun, learning, growing, developing their first job, already having good social contacts with their colleagues. And what they will give in return is ethical behavior. And so there already we have information so that we can follow up employees, because if we have like answers that are more or less deviating from what the majority say, there as well, this will give us input in following up the new hires throughout the first week and months at KPMG. At the end of the first month, we also have an onboarding cafe, which is more focused to the experienced hires, because they will have a normal first day at work, a normal first week with the regular follow-up. And the onboarding cafe is a moment where we invite all the newcomers with some experience before in a cafe, where they will have something to drink and something to eat. And there we have our carousels. We invite different people from our central services who will give them more information about our ethics and independence rules, how timesheets should be completed, some informal and formal rules about how life and work at KPMG is all about. As well, they get the opportunity to get to know the other newcomers at KPMG, and at the same time, they can learn more about the informal and formal rules at KPMG. In month 3, then I will have a role myself, because then I invite all, let's say, the really experienced profiles for a one-to-one chats in my office, just half an hour, asking them how they are feeling, how did they experience the first week as KPMG, what went well, what could be better, to what extent did we fulfill our promises, to what extent maybe I can help them with certain challenges they're being faced with. And there as well, I will then make sure that I give feedback to the performance managers so that we can facilitate and again make sure that the integration and the engagement of the newcomer is stimulated during the first weeks. And then again, in month 6, we repeat this more or less. And then I think after 6 months, you may expect that the new colleague has fully integrated and that the engagement is at a high level so that he or she can really focus on the job. And then we can close the onboarding process, let's call it this way.
Maybe just a short remark. We have about 10 minutes left for the formal presentation, and then we'll have 5 to 10 minutes for Q&A. So if you have a question, we gently muted all of you. Don't take that personal, but there's just too many people on the call. But you can use the chat function. So use the chat function, please, to ask questions that you may have, and I will try to pick out 1 or 2 at the end.
So what is now our experience with the app? Well, I think first of all we ask our new hires. So via the pulse checks, which is a feature in the tool, in the app, we ask them how did it feel to be hired by us. Then you have the score, how was your first week, and we also see, and these are figures communicated by Talmundo, so that more than 80% of the new hires who have received the link to activate the app, that they have actually activated the app. I'm not saying that all of them are using all the features of the app, because on the next slide you will see that people do not always appreciate this kind of technology. What I mean is that don't invest all your time in developing this app without having the personal contact with your new hires. So the app is only helping the pre-onboarding process, and some people will appreciate it, but on the other hand, you also have people who will never activate the app. So it's finding a good balance between the use of technology and the personal touch. This remains, the human contact remains crucial, of course. If I switch to the next slides, there I want to share with you that our goal was to start building on engagement already before the actual commencement date of the new hire, and the app definitely helped us in achieving this goal. And it helps in engaging the graduate hires, but it also helps in engaging our experienced hires, because for experienced hires, normally there's only like maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks between the start of signing the contract and between signing the contract and the start at KPMG. But also for them, it turned out to be very helpful, because it gave them the opportunity to learn already more about KPMG because of the information that was made available on the app. They could already read a summary of some policies and procedures. They could watch the video from our CEO. They could learn about KPMG via the Did You Knows. So we found that the app was not only useful for the younger generation who really like to work with the app, but also more experienced people. They also definitely were very happy and really enjoyed using the app. Because, as Stijn already indicated this at the beginning, I think the cost of retention is even higher than the 7 to 15K that Stijn mentioned. I think for our sector, it's generally said that the cost of retention is between 80 to 100%. So we clearly saw that while already investing in the pre-onboarding as part of a larger onboarding process, there we could see that we lost fewer people than we did in the past, because we did not overwhelm them with sending messages through the app and by pushing them to open the app. But just the fact that regularly you give them some touch points, you gave them some triggers to open the app. This reminded them of the fact that they already signed a contract with KPMG, and they started building their engagements, which also then helped us in reducing the cost of retention, because the cost of retention is really, really high. So with the help of the app, and of course and all the other steps of the onboarding process, we noticed that all our employees are better informed, that their integration will be enhanced, and it was also helpful for us to detect sooner some derailments. For instance, if we saw that somebody who received the link to the app did not open the app, it gave us the opportunity to contact this person to ask, by the way, didn't you receive the link to the app, and why didn't you open it? So this also was a touch point, a trigger to get in contact with this person. And again, this created engagement that the person knew, hey, they haven't forgotten about me, although I signed 4 months already ago my contract at KPMG. So as a final note, maybe, why did we choose to work with Talmundo? Well, if you ask our clients, one of KPMG's brand attributes is innovation, which means that clients, that they expect us to come up with the latest innovations as part of our service offering. And I think also in terms of HR, we have to be up to date and up to speed with the latest HR evolutions. And there we clearly saw that onboarding is top of the list of many organizations. So then, if we find a partner as Talmundo who also believe that onboarding is really crucial, and they were in the process of developing an onboarding tool, and we saw the opportunity for a win-win because we were also looking for tools and means that could help our onboarding process. Well, we saw let's have a win-win for both of us. We will help you. We as KPMG will help you in making the tool better, and you will help us in making our onboarding process better. And I think this is also how it should evolve for the future. The tool is not, let's say, it's not a given. It's not something that's frozen. The tool is constantly evolving, and the tool will constantly evolve. And I think there, as well as user, and there are now many users already, that we will constantly make sure that the tool will be better and will lead to higher engagement, make sure that employees feel integrated much earlier than the first day at the company. Because research has shown that the higher the engagement of the employees, the better the results of the company. So for me, the business case, when I had to present this to our management team, the business case was quite easy because engaged employees will automatically lead to better business results.
Thank you, Wouter. In the meantime, we already had a lot of questions coming in from the audience, so up to you if this is one that you still want to take, or shall we jump into do some Q&A? Yeah, I can see questions from Noor, from Vincent, from many other people coming in. I'll just start picking out a few. Noor was asking, how many people do you onboard per month and per class? And is this a global onboarding program and or a locally arranged program?
How many people do you onboard? Yeah, of course, this depends on how many contracts that we get signed. But let's say that with the 80% hit rates, which means that we have more than 200 people who actually download the app on a yearly basis. I must admit that we don't start sending out the link to the app the week after the signing of the contract. For instance, somebody who has signed the contract in December, we will only send out then the link maybe 4 months before the start of the employment, and we continue to use the app till 3 months after the actual onboarding day, so the first day at the company. So making sure that employees can still go back to the app in case of doubt, that they still think that they need some information, because apart from the app, we also have our intranet with lots of information. We also have an onboarding page on our intranet, but we feel that people will still use the app even when they're on board at KPMG. And then after 3 months, well, they've really integrated, and then they should use, let's say, the regular tools that we have made available for the entire company. The question is a global onboarding program? No, it is a local onboarding program, meaning that the onboarding program as such is aligned with, let's say, the KPMG policy and what KPMG Global thinks is important, but the practical things have been worked out locally, and so is the app. So let's say that Belgium was here the pioneer, and in the meantime, other KPMG countries have also asked whether they could use the app. So there, Talmundo is having discussions with other countries as well. Yeah.
One more technical from Vincent, for example, and there's a few technical questions here. For example, did you centralize the administration of the app, or is it just left locally? I think in this case we do talk about KPMG Belgium, with I think different administrators with different permissions within Belgium.
Correct.
That's how it's been set up. And that's, I mean, to your question, Vincent, the same goes for multinationals, whether you're local or international. There's always different levels of administration with different permissions that come into play. One question from Aline here: is the app only for onboarding, or can it be used for engagement later on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Also something that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago to Talmundo. I think it would be good if we could open the app for people who have already with KPMG for a longer period, because it has so ritual information that I think this could also be useful for people who have already been with the firm for many years. And this should not replace our intranet, for instance, but it's an easy to use tool. So why not expanding this to the entire population of KPMG? That's a good question. So, and I fully agree that Talmundo should also maybe think about further developing the tool to the wider population.
Yeah, it's a slightly different angle, of course. What we do see with onboarding, you really serve on that intrinsic motivation of people having a new job. So that motivation alone actually almost guarantees you great activity in the onboarding app. If we would extend it, and that's the biggest one for us then to reflect upon, you need to find that new angle, which could be ambassadorship, which could be referral at some point. So we're looking into this. It's on our roadmap to think through, but nothing's been decided so far. So more questions. Is there anything known about the 20% who do not activate the app? Regine is saying. So why do 20% of people do not activate the application?
Because they're not feeling familiar with technology, or they think during the recruitment process you've already given me sufficient information. These are the two main reasons. I mean, it's not that they didn't like it, they just said, I'm not interested, no time, already fully informed. That's the reason.
Yeah, sometimes see people still very busy ending a previous job, so their attention for this is maybe just less. What we do see with some clients is that when there's mandatory elements that are part of the onboarding application, for example, your new employer still needs data from you, there's forms you got to complete, otherwise we cannot draft your contract, or you basically can't start. That's a great way to make sure that you've got 100% activation. KPMG's app doesn't have that mandatory piece. It's a lot about culture, engagement, connecting, which is great. But we do see that some clients have that formal piece, more formal piece as well, which is maybe the less exciting piece, but it does guarantee 100% activation. More questions from, for example, Karen. Do you extend the onboarding process after the initial 6 months? Is 6 months the end point for onboarding, Wouter, or?
Yes, why is this the end point? Because then the next step, let's say in the life at KPMG, is then you have been working then on different projects, and as part of our, this is then, let's say, a different topic maybe for our next webinar, is about then performance management. So then people have been working on jobs, and then we have a system of continuous feedback, of engagement reviews. So there, at that time, we have done different tools that will help us in making sure that people who have been on board recently, that are really doing a good job on the job, on projects. And so there we get that feedback to what extent they feel integrated and about their level of engagements. So this is like onboarding is then transformed into another process, which is then performance management, the continuous feedback. So people are constantly, let's say, focused. We constantly will follow people, but then we use a different process than onboarding.
Taking one more question here from Vincent, in terms of the, again, more technical, is it independent, standalone, or connected to other HR systems in terms of also creating profiles or duplication of profiles? I think, Wouter, correct me if I'm wrong, in KPMG's case, it's a standalone application which is not connected to other systems. No. What does happen quite often is that we do connect with an ATS, so you're using an ATS, and when somebody clicks hire, those profiles are being sent to Talmundo to avoid duplication, especially when you have companies using, having more than 300, 400, 500 new joiners a year. That's basically advised. And sometimes we see a connection with learning management systems as well, or with ERP systems, especially when people are completing data, that we send the data back to an ERP system. At some point, we delete them at Talmundo, and actually you store them in an Oracle or an SAP. So we see that happening quite a bit. In terms of, I just got a few more questions about the 4C model. We do have a white paper on our website that you can download for free, and that explains the 4C model in great detail. And you can also take the onboarding scan, as you can see on screen, which is all around the 4C model. It's just 12 questions, takes you 2 minutes, and you get a free report with some first advice on how you can bring your onboarding process and experience to the next level. And we have one more gift for you. We have a freebie here in the tool itself. In the GoToWebinar, we've got a onboarding milestones checklist, which you can download right now, and it's your first kind of help if you want to get going with onboarding. Like right now, Wouter got you so excited to work on this, then the next minute you can just start with this small guide, which gives the first hints and tips on how to bring onboarding to the next level. With this, it's 3:15 now, so we've used our 40 minutes. I know time's precious, so I want to thank Wouter. I want to thank all of you for participating. You will get access to the full recording, so we'll be sending you the recording of this, so you can look at this, share with colleagues if you wish. And if you want to talk to Wouter or myself, I would say connect on LinkedIn and send us a message, and we'll be happy to respond. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wouter.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.